Hey everybody, what's up? Zuda coming to you once again with another tutorial video, another 101 video. This is, I know I said the last video I posted, Celt 101, was going to be my last 101 video, but I decided to do one last 101 video, and this video I think is going to be helpful for especially newer players. I think that players who are more adept at the game and have played the game will find some aspects of this helpful as well, but this is definitely geared towards players who are newer to RTS, and maybe haven't played as many games or aren't as familiar with the game, and with more advanced not necessarily advanced, but even just more difficult to grasp concepts for just general RTS games. So this is going to be Strategy 101, and there are three things that I want to go over in this video. And for this video, I'm just going to be using clips of games, just from raw footage that I've been screen capping as I go along, and a little bit of footage from one of the other 101 videos, a little bit of footage from Celt 101. But the three things that I want to go over are, one, scouting / adapting, and how you can customize your own build orders based off of what you see other players doing and how important scouting is. And we're going to take a couple little looks at what that looks like and how you scout and adapt, and what that all means. Building placement and how important building placement can be in just the whole grand scheme of things, and how important building placement can help keep you protected and can help further your chances of winning. And then efficiency of drop-off points and villager seconds, and we'll discuss a little bit what that means when we get a little further in. So I don't really know how long this video is going to be. The amount of footage that I want to show is probably only in the neighborhood of maybe 6 minutes long. But depending on how long-winded I get, I don't really know how long this is going to be. So, without further ado, I will start the first video that I want to show you. The first video that I want to show you,
I would actually expect him probably
is me talking. No, the first video I want to show you, that was me talking. I was originally going to use this video in a next kind of Greek 101, 102 type video, but it ended up not being the greatest of games, so I'm just gonna use a little bit of the footage from that to show you. So here's a game between Orctastic and Give You Anxiety. Orctastic is playing Celts, and he's the red guy, he's on the other side, and Give You Anxiety is the guy that we're watching right here. Give You Anxiety, you can see, opened racks first, and now he's making an archery range. And the reason why he's making that archery range, you can see me clicking back and forth, is because of the fact that, I'm going to pause it right here, you can see right here, Orctastic has got 2 barracks that he's dropped down. And so if you just think about the logic behind what Give You Anxiety is doing, he scouts 2 barracks, he knows that there's going to be infantry coming out of both of those barracks. He's made a barracks himself, which he's going to presumably make Hippospis out of, because Hippospis are anti-infantry units. But why would he make, say, a stable or another barracks when he can just hard counter what he sees based on what he's scouted? So you can see here, he's scouted the 2 barracks with his scout, which is right here, and this is good practice to have your scout roaming back and forth around and around and around, and constantly, especially once you age up, right in the 4-minute mark, it's really important to constantly be scouting the enemy, knowing where his resources are. He's getting a good read on his resources are here, where his gold mine is. His gold mine is out front of his base, so he knows that he can potentially harass that. How his base is built, where his wood line is, just all sorts of things like that. So especially around the 3.5 to 4 minute mark, you definitely want to be just watching your opponent like a hawk and trying to find out what he's going to do. So Give You Anxiety, as a result of what he's scouted, has dropped an archery range and a barracks, which seems good. And so just logically thinking, Orc, you can see Orc Scout, boom, right there, runs right by his base, sees that, and I remember saying while I was watching this and as I was doing this video live, to be watching for Orctastic's next military building, because, he's just run his scout by, he's just seen it, and logically he's just seen an archery range, and so what is he going to do himself? He drops an archery range himself. So if you aren't familiar with Celts, Celts make slingers, and slingers are the hard counter to archers. So you can see both players here in a matter of, I don't know, we've been playing this video for 15 seconds, have both scouted each other, both have a read on what each other is doing, and are instantly dropping down buildings that are going to make counter units to what they've scouted. So, you know, for example, maybe a Greek player has got a build order that they want to do, and say maybe they want to do barracks, make spearmen, and stables, and then make cav, and they're going to make those two units, and that's what they're going to do. And then the Celt player just drops 2 barracks, makes spearmen, and wins. You know, that would be bad scouting. You need to be able to scout, and you need to be able to adapt. And the way that you do that is be constantly keeping your scout alive, keeping him running around, and looking at what military buildings he has. And so, by doing those things, keeping your scout alive, and just watching what your opponent is doing, you don't really even need a builder. You can just kind of make one up as you go based on what you scout. So we'll watch another, I don't know, 10 seconds of this here. You can see that he's got an archery range as a direct counter to what Give You Anxiety. He's got Give You Anxiety. He's got an archery range and a barracks, and so now he's got 2 barracks and an archery range. And this game kind of progresses back and forth. Orc wins the first little fight based on his good counter units, but then ends up playing a little sloppier in the mid game and eventually ends up losing it. So that was the first example that I wanted to take a look at. I don't think it gets too much more interesting from there. I think we have a little bit of a skirmish, but that's the example that I wanted to show everyone from that video of scouting and adapting. And then I've got one other video. And we'll take a look at my desktop for a second. I think it's this one. Yep. And I want to start this video at 4:15-ish. Yeah. Okay, so we'll pause it right here. So this is actually another video that I just took tonight. And this is between Farmer, I Am Farmer, and Greek RTS God, who is aka the Mista. Both are good players. Mista is a very good player. And here's another situation of adapting, and knowing what your opponent is going to do, using good scouting to adapt and tailor-make your build into something that's going to beat your opponent. So here you can see the Mista has started barracks and archery range, and I'll just tell you, Farmer has started barracks archery range as well in his base. Their military buildings are around the same. Yeah, you can see they've both got archery ranges that are a quarter to a halfway up. I don't remember who dropped which first, but it's fairly standard for those two to be the first 2 military buildings in this matchup. If you want more detailed builds, you can look at the other 101 videos. They should have more information on just the whole general build. But you can see, once again, boom, Mista Scout right where it needs to be. He's got a read on where the resources are. He knows where all these different, you can see the gold right here on the edge, you can see the berries and the deer, and you can see the villagers on the deer. So he knows where the wood line is, he knows where all of his resources are, and he can see exactly what type of buildings are coming up. So we'll go a little bit further. And you can see he's coming just to take a little bit of a harass, coming to get even more scouting, get more intelligence, try and harass these villagers, and then boom. This is the important thing here. So a lot of Persian players have been opening barracks, archery range in this matchup. Myself, I consider myself a pretty good Persian player, and I probably play the most Persian out of any civs, maybe Persian or Egypt. And when I play this matchup, I go Rax, range, and followed by another barracks, and I make Sparbara and Bowman. But what you can see Farmer's done here, and I click on it, he's got a stable. He's made a stable instead. And so this, I would say, standard Celt response to what's more popular. What I do, I think, is probably the most popular right now out of Persian players in this matchup, to go Rax, range. But you can see Farmer's gone stable, and in response, let's take a look at what the Mista does. So against Rax Range Range, which is what I describe as what I do and which is what a lot of Persian players do, the standard response would be to go Rax Range Range from Celts as well, making, direct counter units. But now here, he's got a stable. So he's got two options, really. The Mista does. He can continue with a Rax Range Range himself, and then Farmer's got a better counter because he's got Cav, and the Mista doesn't have nearly enough barracks to probably counter the Sparabara and the Cav that are going to be made from Farmer, or he can instead do what he wants. So you can see the stable goes down, and the instant the stable goes down, what comes down from the Mista? Boom. Right there, it's a barracks, right? So he could have easily had made another archery range, but instead he used the knowledge that he had. He saw that there was a stable coming down. He knew that he's going to need more infantry because he doesn't need nearly as many slingers now that there's only one archery range, and so instead, boom, he drops down another barracks and elects to go Rax Range Rax instead of Rax Range Range, which is probably something that to a lot of people doesn't seem very significant, but when you're playing at a high level and you're playing against other people who are thinking ahead and knowing what they're doing and are trying to maybe catch you off guard or do something a little different or unique to throw you off, those little scouting things can make a huge difference. And so we'll just watch another 10 seconds of this video. You can see the barracks is coming up. This game as well starts off pretty standard and ends pretty quickly. You can see that the Mystic gets a good raid over here, and I think that Farmer's probably concentrating too much on killing this scout that he doesn't really see it, and he ends up losing like 4 or 5 villagers over here to these swordsmen, and he just gets really far behind and doesn't end up being in a good situation at all. So, but that's not the important part. The important part is the scouting and using the intel that you get to further your position, to make yourself have an advantage, and using that advantage going forward and fighting direct counter units against direct counter units and having a better counter army. So that's a little bit on scouting and adapting. Hopefully that wasn't too long-winded, but should give you a better idea of what you're looking for. Remember, the most crucial time for scouting and adapting is really early on. You want to know exactly what your opponent is making, and you want to know exactly what you can make that counters that composition. So finding that nice even balance in between is what separates a good player from a great player, or a not so good player from an above average player that's able to win a bunch of ladder games. So moving on, the next thing that I want to discuss is building placement. This is something that I see a lot of people do poorly, is they just kind of, myself personally, I'm guilty of it as well. Sometimes you get in a hurry, you need to just get your houses down, and boom, you plop down houses, and they're kind of in an awkward spot, and they aren't really doing much. Except for maybe getting in the way, causing bad pathing, not really helping you much. But one thing that I went back and looked at in this Celt 101 video was my building placement. And my building placement in this game is really, really quite good. And so I want to just take through about 1.5 minutes of this video and take a look at the building placement. None of this is by accident. All of this is planned ahead and should be something that you consider every single time you play a game of Age of Empires. You should always be thinking, what can I do to protect myself? And one of the easiest things that you can do to protect yourself is to protect your resources. That should just be an obvious thing. So here you can see I'm building a house line parallel to my, or perpendicular to my wood line, that's going to kind of create a natural barrier, a natural wall to my wood line. And as the game progresses and as the match progresses, that wall continues and gets even fatter and bigger and longer, and helps extend to a point where it starts to cover the berries as well. So we'll just pause here, we take a look. We've got 3 houses here. My berries are out front here, which is not necessarily good. Resources out front of your base are never a good thing. You can see I'm on a wood line here that's a little bit off to the side and out front, which isn't good. But this building wall helps cover that up a little bit, so to speak. So you can see when the next 200 wood comes in, and I get up to 200 wood, and I'm going to look to drop a barracks, I'm going to look to continue that building wall. And there it comes down, and that building wall continues. And you can kind of see how that line is just going to extend and help protect my resources all the way across to my gold mine, which is off the screen here a little bit. It's down to the right. You can see it on the mini-map. And so that building placement really becomes crucial. And so if we just kind of fast forward ahead here a little bit, let's fast forward like 3 minutes. I think I wrote down 6:30-ish or so is where I want to pause and take a look. So here I'm raiding around. I think I go back to my base here in about 5 seconds. Boom, right there. That's where I want to stop. You can see how that wall has now extended all the way across my base, kind of in between the two lines. I've left a little bit of space in between so that if my units need to get in and out and filter back and forth, that they can. Yet the wall itself is pretty thick, pretty standard, or pretty impassable for the most part, especially if you were to be making, cav or something like that, which can be kind of a weakness to Celts. That my building wall is out front of my TC, protecting my gold mine, protecting my berries, protecting my wood line, kind of protecting everything that I have out front of my base. And the reason why you want to do that is if you take a look, well, I can't click on these, but if you were to take a look at the hit points of how many hit points these barracks have, for example, they've got a lot of hit points, honestly, and why not use them? Why not use their beefiness and their tank ability to give you line of sight and take some damage from enemy units instead of, letting him stand right on top of your economy if he's going to come in for a push or for a harass or for a raid. And it gives you line of sight if he's going to raid. Just helps protect you in many different ways that are going to be useful. So that's just kind of a quick note on building placement. Always try and keep your resources safe, especially if you have a gold mine that's out front of your TC. Front gold is not very fun to deal with, especially for like a civ like Egypt who has to play kind of defensive. Front gold can be really tough to manage, but you can kind of make it easier by keeping a barrier between yourself and your enemy with a good solid building wall. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then the last thing that I want to mention, which I'm going to use this same still from, is efficient drop-off points. And this is something that I see a lot of people do poorly, and if you can improve this, this may be the single most important thing in this game. And it's a lot different than other RTSs. StarCraft, for example, there is no drop-off point. Your drop-off point is your nexus. Your resources are always a static distance away from your drop-off point, and you can more or less completely calculate how many resources you're going to have. In Age of Empires 3, there were no drop-off points. You just stood on tree line and gathered, and your resources trickled in. But in this game and other RTSs, AOC for example, there are drop-off points, and having good drop-off points and having drop-off points that are replaced are going to be a big factor in how good your economy can keep up with the enemy. So a couple things to notice. The first one is gold. The gold one is pretty easy to see how I've got this placed. I've got a little bit of space in between the gold mine and the storehouse, and you want that little bit of space so that your villagers can kind of file in between here and just have the easiest time dropping off. Ideally, you'll be able to fit a single full line of villagers in between your storehouse and your gold mine, and they'll just be able to go back and forth between the gold mine and the storehouse by literally just turning around and instantly dropping off and going back to mining. So this is kind of the look you want. If you get your storehouse too close, they won't be able to file in between here, and they'll kind of just pile up on the edges of the gold mine, and then the ones on the furthest outside will have to run all the way around the other guys to drop off, and then run all the way back around. And the more people you put on, so you have 10, 15, 20 guys on the gold mine, they'll be all the way out here, and they'll be running all the way around and dropping off, and they'll run all the way back out around, and they'll run all the way. And just those villager seconds that you're losing, every second that villager is running between the storehouse and the gold mine, is a second that he could be mining. And gold, which gathers at 1 resource per second, literally every second that you have a villager running back and forth across the map is 1 resource that you're missing out on. So just keep that in mind. Always try and have an efficient spot for your gold, especially. And try and keep the amount of villagers running back and forth limited as much as possible. If you get to a point where you have, say, 20 villagers on 1 gold mine, you've only got 1 gold mine left and you've got 20 villagers on it, go ahead and drop a second storehouse right on the other side, mirroring this one, and then the ones that are on this side will be able to drop off as well, and they'll miss out on the running. Yeah, you're dropping an extra 50 wood, but in the grand scheme of things, those extra seconds that your villagers aren't running are really going to pile up, and they're going to make a big difference pretty quick. So that's for the gold. And then another one that I see a lot of people not doing is the wood one. So here you can see this is 6 minutes into the game, and you can see where I put the first storehouse. The first storehouse was right along the edge of the wood line. With the wood line, it's not as important to have this little zone in between, because the trees actually disappear quite quickly, and so you'll be able to chop the first line of trees that are right next to the storehouse, and then you'll have that little gap in between that you'll be able for the next tree. So it's not as important there. That can go just right up to the edge. But you can also see that I'm replacing the storehouse as it goes. So the deeper it gets into the tree line, the more often you want to replace it. So you always want to try and keep a storehouse pretty much as soon as you can fit a storehouse in between your storehouse and the tree line. You want to go ahead and drop that. And then also having multiple storehouses in multiple different places kind of reduces that bumping effect that I was talking about with the gold mine, and having guys run around back and forth and not really doing a lot. So that's the wood one. And then for the food one, you want to stay away from berries, of course, as much as you can, but you also want to just try and keep the bumping to a minimum if possible. And then when you're also hunting, you want to kill the hunts right away with your scout, so that when the villagers go to build the storehouse, it's easy for you to get the hunt down and see where it's at, and get as little running as possible. Basically, what it all comes down to is villager seconds, and you don't want your villager seconds wasted on your villagers running around. And just the less you can have them running around and bumping into each other and not gathering resources, the better off you are. So just keep that in mind when you're playing as well. So that is going to be all for this video. I'm going to call it Strategy 101. It's just 3 basic things: scouting and adapting, building placement, and efficiency of drop-off points. If you can fix up on those 3 little things, a lot of people will see their gameplay improve a lot, because quite honestly, even myself, I can improve almost every single one of these things in every single game I play. And so, to say, I'm doing this as good as I can, if you're telling yourself that, then you're just blatantly lying, because even the best players playing this game right now, every single game, everyone makes some mistakes. So, if you can afford to capture your videos, go for it, do it. If you can't, just try and, get a friend that you can just work out build orders on, and try and, look at what they're doing, and try and just, practice getting reads off each other and seeing what each other's doing, and scouting and getting good building walls and all that kind of thing. So hopefully you found this helpful. If you have any questions on any of the topics I discussed here, feel free to shoot me a PM, message me on the forums, holler at me anywhere you see fit. I'm usually pretty willing to talk. The only times I'm not is usually when I'm in a game or losing to Samwise 12. Then I sometimes don't reply because I'm focused, I'm in the zone. But for the most part, I'm pretty approachable. You can shoot me a message or whatever. So hopefully you found this useful. I'll post it up to YouTube. Strategy 101, Zuda Zuda signing off. Peace out.